And welcome back, everybody, to the Podcaster Nation. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Rory Paquette. I am, as always, your very grateful host. I love being here. I love this. I love my job. I love being able to do this for a living. I love the fact that you're all out there listening. This is for podcasters. It's about podcasters. It's done by podcasters. And our guest today is, you guessed it right, a podcaster, amongst other things. This guy's got a resume as long as my arm, and he's got stuff that we're going to talk about today that I just found out in the pre-interview. I'm already fascinated. You will be too. This is the podcast where the rising tide raises all ships, and we come here to support each other and help each other out. So fasten that safety belt and let's go for a ride. My guest today, the host of the Heart Songs podcast, among some other ones. He's a filmmaker. He has plays his own music, and he's got his own record label. I can't wait to dive into all this stuff with this guy. Please welcome Adam Blaylock to the program. Adam, how you doing, man?
Good. Thanks, Roy, for that generous introduction.
Oh, okay. So you're gonna be humble guy now. You have a record label.
I mean, we'll get into that, and everybody will be immediately underwhelmed at what I mean
Oh,
when I say
listen
record label. But
to
yes,
this.
absolutely.
All right, listen. Why don't we start? Because you've got a lot of stuff. Just on your website alone, you've got a documentary film, podcast stuff, music, a label. Let's start with the podcasting part, okay? Because hey, this is the Podcaster Nation, so let's
Yeah.
let's go in order of importance over here.
Yeah.
You've done several podcasts. You want to maybe talk
Yes.
about your journey of, what was it, a guy, a car, and a podcast, and moving forward to where you are today with Heart Songs?
I mean, sure, I can even go hard in the paint, and we can go back to before that because I got my toe in it before that, but a
Go
guy
for
card
it.
podcast was my first, I guess legitimate podcast. But my nerdery for podcasts is as skin deep as the format. If anybody even remembers back, even probably like before Joe Rogan, when you talk about like Kevin Smith and Ricky Gervais and like some of the early ones, where literally you would have to like get to a computer and plug headphones into a computer and sit on your couch and like download the thing and listen to it. I guess the nerd that when DVDs started coming out and there was all the extras and the behind the scenes stuff like that, that guy felt like podcasting was basically like the next chapter of the same thing where like now you have these people who have done stuff that can sit down and talk about what they've done and what have you. So I loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it, and listened to it for the decade almost that it took for me to get into it. And the whole time just it was one of those things where it's like, wouldn't it be cool to be in this universe? But back then, like you were dealing with servers and bandwidths, and it was basically something that only people with like money or funding could do because it was kind of tough. And then, what was it, '07 when the iPhone came out, and then technology starts to really to become more accessible and user friendly in the sense of ways to do this thing. And so from that point forward, I think I started pestering friends, a lot of bandmates. Like it was one of those weird things where, in the same sense that I'm a geek of behind the scenes and what is it like VH1 behind the music and all the stories behind my favorite artists and stuff.
Yeah.
When I got in bands. And now I'm one of the guys that, the crowd looks at and is like, oh, that's the bass player or the whoever for whatever. I thought I would love to be able to extend that similar nerdery to our fans, where it's like, I need to get these guys that are all rock stars in their own right and are all really funny and interesting people. I need to find a way to get their innards out there, if that makes sense. And podcasting just felt like the best way to do that. And you might be shocked at the pretentiousness of musicians and artists where like they're just like, no thanks, that's extra works, and I don't want to. So just time and time and time again, getting shot down. I did finally get a toe in with this band I was in called The Afterlight. Our guitar player actually owned the studio that we practiced and recorded in, and so it gave me that extra like you guys can't make an excuse space where like he already had all the microphones and all we had to do is like put up a table, get around it, and do it. So we did for like 2 or 3 episodes. We did this thing called the Aftercast. Uh, it was fun, but again, nope. If unless you really just love this thing, you're just not going to stick around. So I was out as fast as I was in, and that is what brings us to what would it have been? It was like the end of 2017. I was just having dinner with a friend of mine, somebody I've known since I was like 24. And we don't keep in like great touch, but we'll see each other probably once a year and we'll just talk for like 5 or 6 hours between like a meal and maybe just find somebody's couch to go sit on and talk. and it just kind of popped out. I was just like, this would be such a great podcast. And I don't even remember her reacting to it. I just remember feeling like, but she's not going to care about it because nobody ever cares about this. And then I got a call from her like 2 days later, and she was like, "So when are we going to do that podcast?" And the ambitious part of me was like, strike while the iron is hot. Like if Chelsea's in it right now, maybe I can actually make this happen. So we made a deal where like I would pick her up on Sunday in like the afternoon and we would go for a drive, just like a 1 hour drive, just maybe a loop around, some long freeway or something. I just set my phone like in the little, mount in my car, hit the voice memo record, and we would just talk. And it turned into a podcast that a friend of her submitted the name A Girl, a Guy in a Car, and we did that for like 19 episodes, and we even had a few of our friends on it from time to time, and it was fun. But then as even with a non-pretentious person like Chelsea, at some point she was like, "I love you and you're really into this and I think you should keep doing it. It's not my bag and I think I should bow out." So we did like a farewell thing, and then I was in this weird uncomfortable place where I'm like, I can do it with somebody else, but I don't think I'm interesting enough or cool enough to do it by myself. So now what do I do? And so I got a couple of my oldest friends, dudes I've known since I was like 6 years old, to sit down at like one of their kitchen tables with me. Again, just threw the phone out in the middle of the table, voice record. And we just had this really nostalgic conversation, just a lot of like our younger days in elementary school and stuff like that. And my intention was, if I remember right, I think we did it twice. And I put both of those up as what became a guy in a car on a podcast. But like they seemed to enjoy it so much, and I know I thought it was really cool that what we ended up spinning it off to a different podcast that we called Jagasses, because like it's Jonathan, Adam, and Glenn, and I just kind of just put that together and was like, that's cool. And
Okay.
we did that for like 12 episodes, but that meant I was still kind of back here by myself. And if I remember right, somewhere around there is where I got the confidence to be like, all right, you know what? Jagasses is cool. You still kind of have your own thing to say, your own story to tell. How do we do it? And that's when I thought, what do I do with a girl, guy in a car? And I'm like, why don't I just call it a guy, a car, and a podcast? And then, just redo the logo a little bit. And then it was awkward for a while because it was just me talking to myself, like on my, drive home from work every day and editing together that week and putting out episodes. But at some point, I guess that part of me that was like, I don't know if I'm interesting enough on my own to do this. Why don't I see if I can get people to just do it occasionally with me? And then it was calling up local musicians and different friends I have and having them do it with me. And that turned into interviews, which over time actually turned into me like branching out and seeing how else I could make that work. And then I got a hold of like services that you can sign up for. And then that got me like actors and comedians and other musicians that I wouldn't have ever had like access to, including
Oh,
some heroes of mine. Like I ended up backdooring into getting to talk to like people that I knew and admired. It was just bananas and it was great. That podcast went on for 150 episodes until in the in the in the throes of COVID. It just it shrunk back down to just me because people just weren't really into doing that stuff. And so I got tired of it and tired of hearing my own voice and assumed everybody else felt the same way. So I shut the whole thing down. And that was so it was like 2020. That was probably like 6 months or so into 2020. And then in answer to your question, and as far as I guess maybe what I'm here to represent today, Heart Songs, the podcast, I didn't start until this past July, which was, what was that, July of 2024. And I wouldn't say it's a longer story. It's more like it's 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 an interesting story about how a seed can grow, I guess you could say, because back in 2008, my my fandom of the band Weezer was met with their, I don't know, how many albums were they in when the Red album came out? They were like 5 albums in or something like that. But the Red album came out, and and I got to put my arms around another Weezer album. And for anybody that wouldn't know their albums by name or what have you, if you ever remember hearing Pork and Beans on the radio, like it was that era of Weezer. And they're just sort of this like geek rock band. So for the most part, their songs are just kind of like bubblegum pop. I mean, if you listen to the early album, there's definitely some pain and some poetry and stuff like that. But for the most part, I feel like Weezer or Rivers, the guy that writes for Weezer, just kind of enjoys writing good music. But the Red album was interesting and kind of different because there was like this emotional side to it that was really really intimate. There's a song called "The Greatest Man That Ever Lived." It's kind of a a rendition of this old Quaker hymn, and it's basically like Rivers took it and turned it into a song that explained the part of him that's an egomaniac, where like he referred to himself as the greatest man that ever lived, and
Wow.
kind of just plays off of that. And I'm the baddest of the bad, and I'm the best that you've ever had, and all this really, it's a beautiful song. But on the other side of that, there's a song on their track three called Heart Songs, and it's this ballad where Rivers basically tells the story of his life in music from his earliest memories to today. And so he starts by talking about like Gordon Lightfoot and I don't know, like Michael Jackson and John Lennon and just all of these different references to all this music that is what shaped him. And then getting into when he got older and he started playing guitar and Slayer and Judas Priest and these bands that were teaching him how to like shred and riff and stuff like that. And then third-ish verse, I guess, he lands on this reference that he was at a rough spot in his life and wasn't really feeling happy. And then a friend of his put on a record, and he said it had a baby on it. He was naked on it, and then I heard the chords that broke the chains that had upon me. And anybody that's nerdy enough to understand that reference, Nirvana's Nevermind just gave Rivers something to do with all of the guitar talents that he had developed. It put it in a box that made sense to how he felt and what he wanted to say. And then he talks about starting Weezer and getting together with some of his bros in rehearsal studios. And then they watch the fan base start to grow. And then the song basically ends with him saying, and then people would come to his rock show and they would say, "This is the song.
Mm.
This is my heart song," meaning stuff that Rivers played. So you get to see this really interesting arc where like he starts from growing up loving music and being very influenced by it. And then as an adult, he has now created the things that has influenced the next generation, and they are being moved to start their own bands and do their own stuff because of what he does. And I heard that song, and A, was really just moved because I have a very similar story of like how Nirvana really broke me in that way, in a beautiful way of wanting to be a musician. But I thought, not even every musician, every artist has this story. They have a story of how art specifically, but specifically music took them from like point A to point B and C and D and on through the what have you. And I remember the idea was in me that like every artist has a version of this song if they were able to write it. And it would be so interesting to hear all of those versions. And so fast forward to, I don't know, it was probably toward the end of a Guy Carter podcast that maybe the actual first bud or sprout out of that seed came that I thought, I wonder if that could be a podcast. And then it's a much longer story that I won't bore you with of the development of that idea and trying to get it to like, what does it look like? How does it feel? And more specifically, how can the audience ingest this sufficiently? Like, how do I not gild the lily? How do I not make it too much? How do I just make it essentially what Heart Song did to me? Like, I'm not in the conversation with the Weezer song Heart Songs. It's just Rivers telling his story. So how do I do that? How do I like set up artists to tell their story? And the end. Like now, if you listen to Heart Songs, it's literally a show where outside of introing the podcast and then introing the guest, I just get out of the way and they tell you their story through songs that have impacted them.
That's awesome. All right. So you're trying to give them some publicity, get the name out there, help them out.
Mhm.
So the podcast works in tandem then with your label somehow,
You
potentially.
would wish. I mean, the tricky part about the label, in that it's a boutique label, and so when I said people would be underwhelmed, my reason for even creating a quote unquote label, like it's not even an LLC, it's not even like a functioning business. It was my excuse. It was the banner under which I could get music out into the streaming platforms that had
Okay.
just skipped that step. Like you're talking about being a scene guy, like a dude that's been in the Arizona, the East Phoenix scene my whole life. I have had access to so many bands you've never heard of that would just delight you and maybe even blow your mind. And the reason you've never heard of them is because, the music industry is kind of a mess and it takes a lot of work as a band to even get to a place where an entity with enough money to really push you to the next level would even see who you are. So it it's not surprising that brilliant bands break up every single day. But I'm the nerd who had the privilege to hear them and even be at their shows. And again, that same nerd that listened to podcasts and watched those DVD extras and all that, I am desperate to give anybody that I can the chance to experience this thing that I experienced. And so over time, what I started to do is reaching out to these people who are now just friends of mine that were in these great bands and being like, dude, can I please release your albums? Please, 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 please. Like, I'll pay the fees every year. I don't care. Like, it would just be dope for people to get a chance to hear this. And most of them were like, yeah, it's cool, man. So it's more of kind of a personal pride thing for me that like I just get to release some bands that I love. And if I'm being 100% honest, there's a selfishness to it because a lot of them are bands that I was in. So like it's also kind of telling my story in a weird way, like where these
Awesome.
albums that I was on and created are available for you to listen to, and they're not just stuffed in somebody's drawer because, you know, it's impossible to make money at music these days.
Is it really? I mean, that's a funny thing to hear
I mean, if
somebody
you're
say.
not Lady Gaga, yeah. I again, I don't. I every time I see like the lineup at like Coachella or Lollapalooza, I'm like, A, how do I not know these bands at all? Like, I've never even heard the name of this band. And B, how did they get there? Because that means they must have some management, record label, something behind them that got them that slot at the festival. Like, it's the internet is great because now you can listen to everything, but the internet sucks because now there's too much and everything is just getting lost in this world where it's funny how social media's intent was to give us a chance to kind of be a little bit more inside each other's lives. But
Hmm.
what ended up happening is everybody backed away from each other and got afraid because they don't want to be that nerdy
Hmm.
side of themselves. They don't want to get judged for liking a band or a song or a movie that, nobody else likes. And so now they aren't spreading
Well,
the word and being like, "Oh dude, I just heard this rad song. Check out this video," or whatever. Like people are more like, "Oh, I got to have my street cred on Facebook, so I can't risk putting it out there like that if that makes sense." And so it's made what if I could be so bold as to say, I feel like you're probably a similar age than me. What we grew up with was a time where you heard about it from your friends. If it wasn't on the radio or if it wasn't on television being
yep.
marketed with a commercial, you heard
Yep.
about it from your friends. For some weird reason, when the internet became a place where now we're all friends, like your friends and friends of friends of friends of friends are my friends, everybody just shut up and buttoned up. Or even worse than that, and I guess it's the political climate, so shame on me, but we don't shut up about things that don't matter, and where it's like, what is happening?
Yeah.
So anyway, um, that that was one of the reasons that I guess I started Blaylock Records. Is like I hate to see things slip through the cracks that are genuinely good. So if I just got to be the guy that just suffers the fee and does it, great. At least it's out there, and who knows? I'm a dreamer, so maybe in the vast wasteland that is the internet, some filmmaker or some commercial advertiser or underwriter or something like that might, by random chance, some Spotify playlist or some weirdness, hear that song and then be like, "That's cool. I want that for this." And then come talk to me about it. And then I get that beautiful opportunity to go back to this artist who's been sitting on the couch for 15 years and be like, "Hey, guess what? Someone likes your song." I'll
Yeah.
cry right now. Like that. That's what it's all about, right? To try to give things a chance, like Fern Gully, make it grow. Like you can. It's anyway. I'm talking too much. I apologize, but
Not at all. I mean, I'm fascinated by the whole thing. And I
oh,
asked
good.
you about the music thing because I was
Yeah.
like, I've never heard anybody just say that out loud that, you can't make money in music anymore. But
Mm,
I get what you're saying. You're talking about the independent guys who are not leveled
yes.
up,
Yep.
trying to break in because now
Yep.
it's the ceiling's not made of glass anymore. It's made out of concrete, trying to get through it and get in there. So if you're not signed, you're kind of
Interesting
screwed.
way to put it. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, no,
It's kind of ironic. We finally broke the glass ceiling only to find concrete. Yeah, I'm going to use that. I like that. That's really interesting.
well, there you go. All right. But no, but I like what you're doing. So I mean, you're just finding a way to get these guys a little bit of, notoriety and trying to put them out there a little bit and see if anybody
If
likes them, and if
possible.
they do, great. That's cool.
Yep.
It's very cool. And you're not charging for this. You're doing it for free?
I mean, the good news is, and I guess this is really inside baseball, because most of what is on that site is my own personal music. And because I'm using podcasting and using different methods to try to get it out there and listened to, what
Hmm.
ends up happening is I'm making some money. Not a lot, and definitely not enough to live on, but some money off of my own music. And so the way these bands benefit is when I say I'm paying the fees, the truth is I'm making more than enough just with my own music to keep my own fees paid up. So technically their fees are just being paid by the excess of my own music and whatever. Because like I said, it's not like I can just cash it out and go have a good time. Like it's not a lot, but it's enough to just kind of keep that ball rolling. So the good news is no, I don't actually suffer anything from it, but yes, I am carrying the financial burden, quote unquote, of their dreams.
No, that's cool though. I mean, I understand. Um, wow, man. I mean, this seems like your heart really is in this portion of it. I mean, even your podcast is aimed at this. So your
Yeah.
heart's in the music.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it has been since I was a kid, and that's it's funny how a few people that I guess on their podcast are like, "When's your episode coming?" And I'm like, "Well, I guess that's the irony about my podcast is like I imagine that you experience this, but maybe you're fortunate to be a little bit more successful than I am at it. With me, my podcasts have never been financially successful. They don't really draw like a big listener base, generally speaking, and so it's been kind of playing for the love of the game. But with a podcast like Heart Songs, where it is dependent on a guest because it doesn't function unless there's somebody there to tell their story,
Yeah.
I have to kind of accept the fact that no matter how much I'll try and how many different like management teams I'm working with to like have their artists be submitted for the podcast and stuff, there will come a day that it's probably all going to dry up unless it gets big enough that it's like, of note, if that makes sense. So, in the sense that I have to accept that this thing might just turn into sort of a giant collage of like 150 episodes and then it just dries up because I couldn't get any more, I will be the last episode if I ever have to shut down Heart Sounds, and I'll tell everybody what my heart sounds are and why. I
Well,
mean,
that
as beautiful as
yeah.
that probably sounds, I kind of hope it doesn't happen. But if it does, at least it's also kind of beautiful to me that I can be the period on the end of the sentence.
Yeah. I mean, at least you have a little bit of control at the end there. You know, and
Kind of, yeah,
it's
that's a
up to
good way to
you.
put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it lets me own it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But you know what? Power to you, man. I love what you're doing. So I mean, I'm a little surprised to hear that you're not living on this, to be honest, because this sounds like something you could really just boom, and
I
grow.
could tell you why I'm not living on it if it would interest you, and maybe this would
Sure.
even be a conversation where you can educate me because I'm not
Well,
one.
let's
It's
not go
one of
too far.
my well, it's one of the most difficult things about being who I am. I am not the most talented man in any room. I have been in bands with guys that are such better songwriters than me, such better performers than me, and I'm always the guy in the back playing some backup instrument that's just glad to be there. And because of that, I accept that like I don't have the clout, I don't have the reputation to get so many different things done. So with Heart Songs, the way I needed the show to function to be an emotional experience for the audience is the songs that are being talked about have to be present in the show. Like it'll make an emotion for somebody to say the name of their heart song, and then I can make a swell with a clip of the song they're talking about, and then kind of fade that into them explaining their relationship to it. Because of that, I'm using copyrighted material and I'm using it without permission. So
Mm,
I kind of
okay.
at the gate had to make a decision that I'm not going to monetize this podcast. There's no commercials on it. There's literally a link in the description to my Venmo if you want to support the show. I mean, good on you and thank you. But I don't even mention it in the podcast. Like I'm not. I intentionally don't monetize it in case some of these big record labels start having a problem with it. So at the very least, I can be like, sue me if you want, but like, I'm not even making money, so I don't know what you're trying to get out of me. Like, I'm just literally trying to. And I said again, inside baseball, when when my podcast drops on YouTube, almost 100% of the time there's copyright claims. I dispute every single one of them. And I tell it that I lie to them and tell them that I have the license because the only way you're going to get to that box where you can give an explanation of what you're doing is to tell them that I have a license or agreement. And I get to that box where you can explain what you're doing. And every single time, I even have it on a notepad in my phone, so I don't even have to type it again. So I could just cut and paste the same message. I say the clip in the song is negligible. The artist's YouTube channel, the artist's YouTube music channel is linked in the description, and I am not monetizing this podcast. No one loses. I say the same thing every single time. And what's really funny is, especially specifically YouTube, I don't know if other streamers are like this. You have a 30-day window where if the label does not get back to you, YouTube will automatically dismiss the claim and you can play your video. Like, and almost every single one of my videos have have come out because of that. Because if I wait
Hmm.
30 days, the label never. I imagine they're the stacks of copyright claims with them are through the roof, so they just don't have time to get to it. And there it is. I've had one come back and say, "You don't have permission to do this." It was a Pink Floyd song, and the irony is, when I looked at the video, expecting that maybe they took it out or they X'd it, you can still watch the video. I have no idea what happened, like that they said you don't have the rights to do this, and yet the video still plays fine. So I don't know. But that's
Yeah.
why I didn't monetize it because I'm trying to be respectful to the fact that I'm using copyrighted material without permission.
Right. I got yeah. I like you keep using the expression inside baseball because, if you're a podcaster, and most people that are listening to this, I think are in some capacity in
Yeah.
this particular, program. But folks who get it do understand why this is funny.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
so
I hope they're laughing. Yeah.
yeah, right.
Or at
Well,
least closing their eyes and shaking their head at me for being, I guess, lazy. Because I'm sure there are ways, again, that smart people could tell me you can get around that and you can do your thing and I could have a monetized show. But if I'm being 100% honest again and really vulnerable here, back to what I said about being insecure about the fact that I'm nobody and that I don't have the reputation to make this show, which I think is a great idea, anything great. My hope is that someone bigger and better than me will eventually come along and be like, I like what you've done with the show so far. Would you be willing to part with the idea so I can take it the rest of the way? I promise you, Rory, I don't even care if he offers me money. I will cry and say thank you. This was my biggest hope that this show that's a decent idea can finally go somewhere. But honestly, I think the only thing I'll even ask him to do is like, could you just insert somewhere in somewhere that I created? Can I stay the creator of this show and you can just take it wherever it's going? Then at least, I could just, I don't know, sleep with some pride that I'm like, look, mom, my name's on the masthead, something. But
you just want a
I don't know.
byline created by and
Kind
move
of.
on,
But
right?
if they want to throw some cash at me, thanks. I mean, it wasn't easy to do and it definitely failed a lot. It failed a lot until it succeeded. So it would be nice to, yeah, maybe get a little something off it.
I was going to say, I mean, the show's doing pretty good right now, right?
It depends on what you mean by pretty good. My listenership, I don't know, it probably starts with maybe like 30 to 40 views per episode, like in the first couple of weeks. And then over time, each episode, like I think the highest downloaded episode right now is at 140 downloads, which is
Oh,
ironic because
dude.
he's not even like the most famous guy in the thing, but for some reason, like that's just the highest download one. So when you say it's doing well, I really don't know. I've never been a part of a show that has like tens and even hundreds of thousands of downloads, so I wouldn't even know how to get there. I don't know what that looks like.
I just want to like stop the podcast and pause it for a minute and go cry in the corner right now because I mean you have like the pieces of oh my God.
I hear you. I want
you
to cry too.
you've got the framework and the know-how and the interest and the passion. They just put it all together and be like boom, but man, you're so
I
humble.
think the hardest part. No, thank you for saying that. I think the hardest part about what you're saying is I'm just smart enough to smell what you're saying. Like I can comprehend what you're saying,
Yeah.
and then my wits and my intelligence can't get over that fence. I don't know what's over there, what tools you would need. I mean, the irony is I even have rich friends, rich, successful business people friends, and it's like nobody just wants to turn around and be like, "I think you have something good here. Why don't we do this, this, and this?" And I'm like, "Well, I would have never thought to do this, this, and this." And then, but I'm floating alone in an ocean. I don't like there. I am doing what I do, and I will always love my friends that helped me do the first 10 episodes. Because if I couldn't get past the first 10 episodes, this thing would have never gotten anywhere. I wouldn't be talking to you right now if that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah,
Like,
that's awesome. Yeah.
love them so much because they gave me just enough time to reach out and get some tentacles going. And now I'll cry again. I have banked episodes. Like, I have air to breathe. I have space to be like, to think and be like,
Mhm.
now what do I do? And where do I go to get other
Right.
guests? Which is,
Man.
even in Guy Carter podcast, I was just working week to week and just trying to stay afloat. So, yeah, anyway.
Yeah, that's awesome though. I mean, it's not a bad place to be. You have a lot of options. You can go a lot of different directions. Um, the coach in me, of course, is coming out right now, and I have to ask you just
Do
one
it.
question. I'm sorry, I have to.
Okay.
It's killing me. The you just mentioned, hey, I've got these friends. People have money and so on, and no one's saying, hey, I'll just take this. Have you asked anybody here's what I want to do. Give me some money for it.
No.
I knew
Good
it.
question.
It's okay. I love you, man. It's awesome because
Yeah.
that's where
I mean,
most people are, and it's okay. It really is. I mean,
it's
you're in a great
it's an
spot.
insecurity thing. It's more like it's less like, do I think they'd give me the money, and it's more like, is my idea good enough? Because
Yes.
I could sit here and tell you with my whole heart that it's the most brilliant thing that's ever happened to approach somebody, and it's not even to approach somebody with money. It's to approach somebody and to have them invest, meaning that ROI is all they care about. They're like, fine, you have a cute podcast, good for you. Where's my
Right.
money? I'm terrified that not only maybe the idea is not good enough, which is altogether possible, but that like they're going to hand me the money. And like we said a second ago, I'm still the idiot that doesn't know how to do anything. Like now I have a bunch of money, but I don't know what to do with it, which is pointless. Like again, if I could get a partner with some business acumen and I can do the artsy side and put the show together and they can take it and make it great, great. But again, for some bizarre reason, and maybe I'm more of an asshole than I've ever given myself credit for, and my friends aren't honest enough with me. Like maybe I'm just difficult to work with. Does that make sense? Maybe the reason people are like, no thanks is because I'm too opinionated or whatever.
Uh,
And maybe that's why. Because again, even
okay.
even my fiance is a successful lawyer and we live in opulence because she does a great job. She knows what I'm doing. And even she's like, good luck with that. And so I think on some level, like my self-esteem says, if it was great, people would look at it and say it's great and let's do something about it. But in her defense, what you're talking about is investment in art. And I
Mhm.
think unless you're the kind of person that already just does that, as maybe that's your
Hmm.
bag, what confidence do you have to put your money into art that hasn't in and of itself succeeded? It's the argument with current record labels. The minute, what was it, like 1998 or something like that? The minute that record labels shut down the development leg of what they did,
Hmm.
they gave up and they decided that we're just going to look for the band with the most Instagram followers and we're going to invest in them. And that's why, to be honest, and again, any one of your listeners that wants to disagree with me and yell at their podcasting device right now, fine. It's why music sucks today. It's why it sucks because people don't follow an artist on Instagram because the artist's music changed their life, at least for the most part. They follow them because their Instagram videos are good. That's a different thing than making a good album. See what I mean? So like
Yeah.
the whole process is just broken. And so I'm one of these, I think maybe I'm even arrogant in my independent status. I'm like, yeah, screw you and all your money. Like I'll succeed the grassroots way, the old school way. But to your point, I'm even a little too stupid to do that. So I kind of don't I don't know. I'm just it's what is it? It's that line from The Dark Knight where when he's talking to Two Face and he's like, what does he say? I'm like a dog chasing a car. I wouldn't even know what to do with it if I caught one. Like there's something that energy about me where it's kind of like I'm ambitious and I'm pursuing things, but to be honest with you, I don't really have a goal. Like I'm not even sure where it's supposed to end. I'm pushing it until I get tired of it or until I can see other people are tired of it, and then I'll shut down if that makes sense.
I listen. Let me back up for a minute on all this stuff because first of all,
Sorry.
thank you for participating in this whole conversation. Okay, because you could have like told me, "Hey, shut up and leave me alone," like 20 minutes ago, and I appreciate that. But I really appreciate you being, vulnerable enough to be honest about all this stuff because what
Mhm.
you're talking about is something that hits every podcaster in the whole world at some point. And dude, that's just plain old imposter syndrome. It's
Yeah.
why does anybody want to listen to me? Why do I want to get on the
Yeah.
horn and start talking, right? And,
Yep.
if you've got a regular following, especially if it's
Mhm.
between like, 40 and 150, I mean, you're a successful podcast, man. I mean, you
Good.
are. I mean, the people, we're not Joe Rogan. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Joe Rogan's Joe Rogan. The rest of us are not.
Yeah.
That's just that. Okay. So you can't compare yourself to the people that are up in the stratosphere that are, lining the sky with gold. I mean, it's the
Mm.
meat of us down here that are, jockeying and moving around and, lifting each other up and everything else. But um, I hope we get to talk more because I think you got great ideas. I really do. And I love
Thank
what
you.
you're doing. But let me
Appreciate it.
let me bring this back here and stop busting your chops for a minute, because you also have a film that's like a
Yeah.
documentary.
Good.
Tell everybody about that. I'll let you off the hot seat about turning this into a business, and
Okay.
and tell everybody
Fair
about
enough.
that for a minute.
Anytime. I mean, again, maybe just to put a period on that part of the conversation for anybody listening and that's listening to that hot seat and I don't know, maybe starting to have your own ideas. It is my opinion that the best thing anybody could ever do for you is put you in the hot seat. Because if you're not willing to endure the heat of somebody being genuinely critical or pointing out things that maybe you haven't thought of that you're doing wrong, you are already failing. Because you meaning that you could be succeeding more, but there's things that you're not um I don't know, brave is the word that's coming to me, but that feels condescending. You're not considering fully considering the possibilities by not really enduring the hot seat of your friends, families, and other artists telling you like where and when your stuff maybe isn't great or fully developed. That being said, um, so a guy at Carter podcast is going, and I'm doing my thing, and like I said, I've had by this time I've had some interviews, and I'm just feeling really good about the show. I think for anything I'm able to do, it's pretty close to top tier. And then I get a text message from one of my old missionary companions. I haven't seen this dude in, I mean, by that time, like almost 15 years, haven't talked to him. And it, to be very short about our relationship, when I first met him out in the fishing field, like I just wanted to hang out with this guy all the time. He was just one of the most intriguing personalities. Just he was very like, I don't give a shit, if that makes sense, which is, it's hard to explain why that's interesting in the context of being a missionary, but you're living in this world where there's all these rules. So to meet somebody that just feels like he's just not putting up with that is so fascinating. And then fast forward after meeting him like a year or so, I got to be his companion. So it was just me and him 24/7 for like 6 weeks or whatever it was. And like I'm just such a beta that I just baited to his alpha. Like I just was really a big fan of this dude. But during our time together, some stuff was already going on by the time I got there. It was just kind of weird and just not really how missionaries usually spend their time. And then it just kind of escalated after that to the point that, he didn't even finish his mission. Like they had to send him home because of some stuff that had happened. And so in that was really hard for me and stuck with me for all these years. He reached out to me and it was just this huge long message about how sorry he was. And it was just, and like I called him, we had a long conversation about it. And it was just so cathartic that in that it's very common for missionaries after they come home from their mission to go back to their mission field and just, visit with old investigators or members that they knew and stuff like that. I never did that. When I came home, I just put Pittsburgh in the rear view and called it a day. But after having this conversation with him, I just thought maybe now's the time to go back. And then that, because I guess something that's also funny about podcasters, and again, maybe just inside baseball, I feel like we just want to hit record on everything. Like every place we are, we just want to capture it and we want to like offer it to an audience. So
Everything's a good story, man. There's good
it
stories
is, it really
everywhere.
is.
Yeah.
And so I got in that headspace where I'm just like, if I spend all this money to go back to Pittsburgh to just like hang out, I mean, maybe that seems kind of pointless. Like, is it a consumable product? Like, there's a way that I can offer to people the experience of me going back. And so originally it was just an idea. I was just going to do a series of podcasts and just sit down with people along the way that I had um, experienced that with, and then just put it out, and you could just listen to it. And then the thought of what if you put a camera in, like what if you broke that other wall, and what if you turned this thing into something visual. And I grew up on Spielberg and Ron Howard and George Lucas, and then in my teenage years with Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez and Kevin Smith, and like I am a cinephile. I love movies, and I've always just had the tiniest, like even less than the podcaster ambition, the tiniest little seed of like I want to be a filmmaker. You know what I mean? Like I just really wanted to be behind the camera and telling stories, but just never had access to, never. I'm not even really a storyteller in the sense that I like write stories. So it was never something that I thought I could do, but it's just a secret ambition. And then this blossoming into why don't you tell the story as a documentary turned me into like Morgan Spurlock. And I'm like, I could do this. Like, why don't I just do it? Like I was very inspired by Super Size
Yeah.
Me and just the way it's you're in his lap the whole time, really, as he's just walking through all this stuff. And I thought, I'll just go do it. So the very shorter version of the story is I did. I called up some old companions. I got in touch with my mission president and his wife, and I got them all to sit down and do podcast interviews with me that were videoed. And along the way, like I went from Arizona to Utah to where the missionary training center is, and I went from Utah to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and spent like a week and a half there going to all the different apartments that I lived in. And like along the way, just shooting Pittsburgh, shooting Pennsylvania, and trying to show you what this place was like. And then being able to intersperse with that a guy, a car, and a podcast style, me just sitting in a car driving to a place with a camera on me, telling you where I'm going and what we're doing, then interview clips with all these people in specific parts of the movie where like their stories are relevant and all that sort of thing, and got to make this documentary called Back to the Berg that is about me going back to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and reliving the experience to the point that at the end of like, I mean, he he is introduced earlier in the film because he and I served in a same area, not at the same time, but he had some fun stories, and so I wanted him to be a part of the Beach View segment. But at the end of the film, me and the guy that texted me, the guy that reached out, and the guy that apologized, and what have you, had this long conversation about what happened, and both of us in tears, like both of us just really healing in front of your eyes. And on the same token, being able to kind of describe the ways that Jesus was involved in a lot of that healing and the things we learned over the years from the time that we were together. And you know, then I came home and I just got, I'll cry right now. I got to say so many things in that documentary that had been choking me for 15 years that it sounds lame, but when I was editing together the closing credits, I was bawling just at my computer's editing together because there was just something like I just finally got to release all this book for 15 years, and it was delightfully cathartic. But hopefully, what that means is that the audience is getting a good product, and you can sit down and enjoy not only a story if you're not Mormon, and maybe you see like missionaries riding around on bikes in your town or walking around knocking doors. And I've always just wondered what's that all about. That's how I made the movie. Made the movie from the perspective of what if you didn't know anything about this and you wanted to know. So I'm just going to tell you, you know, soup to nuts. Who are these guys and what are they doing?
Nice. Sounds like you got a little bit of closure in that process, man.
A
On some
lot,
things.
so
Yeah.
much.
Good
Yeah.
for you. Good for you. And yeah, I mean, now it's on your website, so anybody can check
Yep.
this out, which is also
Yep.
cool. So, I mean, in addition to, it's probably a pretty cool story, and you're a pretty entertaining guy, so I would imagine
Thank you.
it's probably a good product. I think anybody who's out there and is longing for some kind of closure on something probably could benefit from seeing this, you know.
Well,
So that'd be neat.
tangentially, yeah, it'd be great to have you watch it and feel my feelings. But you
Yeah.
know, just like at the end of Forrest Gump, are we really sitting there and crying with Tom Hanks because Jenny's dead, or are we crying with Tom Hanks because something inside of us that is so similar to that loss is what's really touching us? And that's I would love. I mean, I'd love for people to just better understand Mormonism, better understand that faith and spirituality. But at the same time, if what we're going through brings something out of you, win, 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 win. Yeah.
Yeah. You're definitely an artist, brother.
Thank you, dude.
Yeah,
Appreciate
for
that.
sure. I like that. All right, let me get off all this stuff. You've got a lot of really cool products. Everybody's got a good chance, a good idea to look for it. The
Mm.
website is Blayrock. So your name's Blaylock, but it's
Yep. Yep.
blayrock.com. I'll
You
make
got
sure
it.
that's in the show notes, of course, but I want to tell everybody
Cool.
that right now. So go
Please.
check out all this stuff, everybody, because it's really cool. Um,
Nice.
and then, all right, a couple quick podcasting questions because I
Do it.
gotta get my little technical stuff
Okay.
in here and make everybody happy. And
Okay.
I do have my Arnold Schwarzenegger question, where he like basically says I'll be back in every movie. So I have one that I have in every podcast. So
Okay.
here it is. You
Cool.
ready?
Yeah.
Okay. It's nowhere as cool as Arnold, but at least I get to say Arnold in the show. So he basically it's with the podcasting and these projects you're doing and everything else. What is the thing about doing what you do that you love the most? And what is the thing about doing what you do that you really just can't stand the most?
Mm. If I can answer that question specific to heart songs, um, I'll cry right now. It's so funny, like how this idea that was just a seed and it grew and it became this thing, and now I'm just like the facilitator of it is so. It's funny that I have the sense of humor to let people like talk shit about it if they feel like it, but it's so personal to me. Like My favorite thing about what I do is that I am the first audience member of Heart Songs, the podcast. When people send me their file with their interview, like them answering the four questions that are in the podcast, I'm the first guy that gets to experience them saying things like, when I was a kid, my heart song was, I don't know, I'm trying to even think of one. There's, 37 plus episodes of examples, but like the guy, the highest downloaded episode, his first heart song, something that touched him when a kid and stayed with him, is the theme song to The Muppet Show. I remember he said that. And he's a good friend of mine, but like I just kind of like delightfully teared up. I'm like, that is about the most beautiful answer. And I got to like find a little clip and put it in there, and he got to explain what it was like to be a kid in the 90s. And we're like, scheduled TV, and it's just so exciting to sit there and what have you. But my favorite thing is that I'm the first one that gets to hear people just pour their souls out, and I get to live it with them. Like I get to, there's something really intimate about having them share themselves so intimately with me, and then me being in the studio and being like, how do I not take the air out of this? How do I lift this? How do I make this as impactful as I can make it? The thing that I hate the most about it, it goes back to my frustration with social media. It's the fact that like because people are so, seemingly anyway, disenchanted with like giving feedback or like sharing something and telling people that they had a good experience with it. Like my experience with Heart Songs is literally I'm putting stuff out into the void. Like the only people that ever say nice things about it are guests. Like they comment and they're just like, sincerely, this is one of my favorite things ever, and that's beautiful. But I look to your point at all the back office and all the downloads, and I don't hear from any of these people. Like I don't know what they're experiencing or if something moved them enough to share it with a friend. And so because we're all a little too insecure because the internet has kind of made us all more naked than we're comfortable with, I don't like that I create this thing that's very meaningful to me and I intend it to be meaningful to other people, and I never hear back when and if it is ever.
Hmm.
Very sad. Hard to
Interesting.
stay motivated in that space to keep doing it, to just assume that people are having good experiences and just
Yeah.
have no empirical data about that.
Wow. Hmm. Great answer to the question. I appreciate you digging deep like that for that one.
Mm.
Um, wow. How do you promote heart songs and all your stuff on your website?
Are you ready for to teach me more? Because you are your coach brain is going to hate this answer. Your coach brain is going to say, "You lazy prick, you don't deserve a podcast," and I agree with you. I have three social media pages: Facebook, Instagram, and X. I post every episode on every one of them the once a week when it drops. That's it. And if I'm being fair, part of that comes back to using copyrighted material, and like I'm not sure, in the sense of somebody trying to sue me, if me trying to market a non-monetized podcast is also illegal for different reasons. So I guess I'm just trying not to cause more trouble, if that makes sense. But at the same time, I'm stupid and I'm lazy. Like I don't, I don't know if I just spend another 5 or 6 hours a week, like just finding blogs and forums and things that like a Reddit feed or something. Like if I just dropped it in like Reddit feeds and let people,
Sure.
I
Yeah.
don't know if that would make any much of a dent, but I guess I'm also too lazy to find out. Like, I don't know. It's
Okay.
the idea of the podcast was grassroots. So I'm hoping it's good enough that people just tell people about it because it's good. And if they don't, I think I can just live in the world where it doesn't succeed because the internet has destroyed the social aspect of life, and that's not fun.
I hear you. You're in a tough spot because your beliefs matter to you, and
Mhm.
you not that that puts you in a tough spot, but it's good that they matter to you.
Yeah.
But when they do, and when your belief about social media is that it's ruined everything that you care about,
Mhm.
then it's tough to turn around and go, how can I now use that to grow this thing that I really care about? So I get
Yeah.
the conundrum that you have
Mhm.
to sift through.
Yeah.
I mean, at least you're honest. Hey, man, I have Facebook and IG and an X, and I post when it comes out once a week. And that's it. Leave me alone. Got it. So I mean, are you you're giving the links to the people who come on, having them share it?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I should have
Okay,
said that. I email to the person who was a guest your episode's live links to Buzzsprout where I host it, Spotify and Apple Podcasts because those are just two of the biggest places that people
sure.
usually listen to us, so what have you.
Okay.
And then like this is my effort for guests to take it seriously. And again, whole separate conversation of how guests actually treat being a guest on a podcast. And I feel like you could probably even get into this with me because I'm betting I'm not the only one experiencing this. I put a PNG of the logo of the podcast in the email so that if they want to share it on their social medias, you have an image
It's right
of the
there.
logo of the podcast to be like, look, I was on this show and here's a link. Never, never. I mean, 37 guests. How many people have posted about it? Genuinely, probably four or five, maybe. And if I'm being honest, those are people like me. They're like nobodies, and you've never heard of them, and their episodes maybe gotten 11 downloads the whole time it's been up. I'm not even saying that critically. I'm just saying those are the people that are of the status where like it matters to share with your friends that you were on this podcast versus these people that, to use your word, are maybe coming out of some form of the stratosphere to be on the show and then
Hmm.
going back up into it. Yeah, I'll never hear from them again. It's gone.
Hmm. And you email this
That's
to everybody.
I do. Well, and that's what's tricky. Like, as two random examples, and I'm not saying this in the sense that they didn't post it, but I'm saying this in the sense that they're good examples of, I think, why it didn't get posted. And I think I can make my peace with it a little bit because I'm really grateful that they were on my show. Ian Dench from EMF. If anybody's like, who in the hell is that? If you remember in the 90s, there was this song called Unbelievable. You're unbelievable.
Oh yeah.
The band that wrote that song, the guy that wrote that song, was on my podcast. He was on Heart Songs, a beautiful episode. Courtney Taylor Taylor, the singer songwriter of the Dandy Warhols. Again, if any of you indie kids have no idea who that is, think of the White Stripes, but like bands before them that inspired what they do and never got as famous as them. Like that's the Dandy Warhols. I got a hold of them through a management company. So like a management company offered them as a possible guest. I said, yeah. And they sent me, files and now they're on the show. I sent back to the management company that their episodes were live. The manager replied back and said, thank you. Never saw anything on their social
That was
media
it.
feeds, never saw anything anywhere. Nothing. So on some level, that manager probably has a lot of roster to deal with. And so they probably forwarded it on to whoever deals with that band, if not the band specifically. And then it's up to the band to give a shit. I don't know like how that's working. And so I'm not intimately enough connected to that to like follow up or try to remind people to do stuff. But it's specific to those two, I guess. It is, I don't know, deflating might be too dramatic of a way to put it, but like it's so hard. Like I can't even explain to you when Ian Dench, like I didn't know who he was. He came on a list of people that I could have, and I said yes to all of them because I'm a low level podcast. I'm like, let's do this. And I got his file back and I started listening to it. And I'm like, who is this guy? So I just Google Ian Dench, EMF, and I'm reading the Wikipedia page. And in the Wikipedia page, it says, yeah, Unbelievable hit like number one on the UK charts. And I'm like, hold on, that Unbelievable? And I like stopped the audio file, went to podcast, went to EMF Unbelievable. I'm like, wait, what? And then like as I'm listening to the file and I'm texting friends. I'm like, you will not believe who's about to be on this podcast. Spoilers, Ian Dench gets to his heart song, which is the last thing that you're saying. It's the thing that you've achieved that you hope touches people. Like Rivers said that he experienced people being touched by his music, and Ian Dench said it has to be unbelievable, doesn't it? With like just sort of a grin. And then the man goes on to not only explain how he wrote the song, he has a guitar in his hand and he's acoustically showing you how the riff came to be. And I'm sitting at my office in my job, my stupid day job, just clicking away, and all of the shit has come out of my ass. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm floored at the level of geekery that has just been achieved by my stupid little show. Back to your question. I released it. I think it's a beautiful episode. The band, to my knowledge, never did anything about it, so none of their fans will ever know unless they're geek enough to get on Spotify and type in Ian Dench that it ever exists. And for me, if my ego was bigger, I could let that deflate me. But it's fine. All right. Like I said, at the end of the day, if this
Yeah.
show just ends up being a collage and that's it, and I shut it down, get back to my life, okay. I don't think I would be devastated by that. But to your point and your kind words, I think there's more to it than I have the capacity to do anything with, and that's very depressing because I want it to be something big and good, but it's in the hands of a nobody. So that's kind of hard to work with.
You're killing me, man. I mean, you've built this thing, and you keep saying that you're nobody and you're nothing and everything else. And I just want to reach over there and slap you. You're lucky you're not sitting here in the same room with me. You're
That's kind. I'll take
you're
that as a
not
compliment.
nobody.
That's
You're
kind.
not nobody. This is not nothing, and you're doing something really cool here. So we're going
Thanks,
to talk
man.
some more. After this is over. You're not going
Okay.
anywhere. You're not getting dismissed
Okay.
after the show.
Okay.
All right, man. Listen, just in the interest of time, I do need to start wrapping this up just because
Okay.
we're having fun, but everybody
Sorry.
out there is going, hey, man, look, wrap this up. I got to go to work. So,
Yeah.
I usually kind of wrap things up and close with a question about, giving advice to folks who,
Okay.
are not nobodies. And okay, so let's keep
Yeah.
that in mind. All right.
Okay.
Um, but the bottom line is you've been around for a little bit. I mean, you've been doing this for
Yeah.
a minute. So,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you've encountered a million different things where it was like, whoa, yeah, got to learn from that. Can't let that happen again. What
Yep.
what sort of advice would you have for any podcaster out there that's not yet where you are in experience and accomplishment and so on and so forth?
If I could maybe give an answer that is intended to be some version of know thyself, I think there's two different kinds of people in this world. I think there are people that learn by doing, and I think there are people that learn by learning. Um, Try to figure out who you are in that vein as early as possible, because if you're a learn by doing, but you're just trying to learn by learning and you're collecting all this information of how it's going to be when you finally do it, you're going to be on your couch 20 years later and be like, why didn't I ever do that thing? And it's the secret. You just got to do it. You just got to do it, and you got to be honestly okay. Here's a very weird piece of advice: watch really aggressive stand up comedy. Like watch Louis C.K. and Daniel Tosh and Anthony Jeselnik and Bill Burr, and watch things that will help you disassemble your ego and tell you that you're stupid and that you're wrong about things, because it's going to be a whole lot easier to face failure if you've already kind of got that like flak jacket on of just like, all right, it's cool. Yeah, this doesn't feel good right now, but I'll get over it and I can learn things from this. And the other side of the same coin, like of know thyself, one of the things that you might discover about me if you get into my work and the film and the music and what have you is I am a doer that learns by doing. And because of that, the quality of my product suffers because I don't really spend a lot of time in advance trying to like learn how to do things that would just make something sound or look or be better. Like, if I'm being 100% honest, Back to the Berg is 3 hours and 47 minutes. If I had less of a pretentious, stupid head on my shoulders, I could have whittled that thing down to something more digestible or been smart enough to release it as a web series, which I should have done.
Hmm.
But I just was so arrogant and wanted to be a filmmaker and not like a TV producer that I had to make it a film. And now it's so long and I think loses you as a result. Like it's a little bit of a slog to stay in. So in the sense of know thyself, like learning by doing is amazing. Don't you're listening to a podcast for Pete's sake. Accept the fact that you want information and find ways of getting it. Like don't be me. Don't be afraid to watch an hour and a half of YouTube videos just to figure out how to EQ a vocal track. Do you know what I'm saying? Like invest in yourself by learning how to do the thing that you do, and don't necessarily think that just doing it should give you the clout that it should, because I'm over here saying that I'm a nobody and I'm nothing, not because I am a nobody and that I'm a nothing. I've done a lot of things and I appreciate your kind words about it, but because my insecurity is that I did them with very little know-how of how, and it shows in their production value. So yeah, don't be afraid to just do it and fail and put something not good in the world, because you learn from that. But you don't even have to go to school anymore. Man, there's so many YouTube videos and TikTok channels and Reddit feeds. Like there's so many good places to get information about how to do what you do well.
Yeah.
Just don't be afraid to get information. You know what I mean?
I love that. That's great. That's great advice, man. Okay. You know what? That is a great way to wrap this up. And I thank you so much for bringing all this here to this episode today, man. You have so many cool things going on. Tell everybody again the website where they can go to experience all of this stuff that is so cool.
Blayrock.com. Blayrock.
Blayrock.com. Right on. Okay. And is it okay if they follow you on social media or anything like that? Check out what you're
Oh, for the
releasing?
love of God. Heart Songs has all those pages I mentioned. Evening the Score, it's all one word, is the name of my band. Feel free to follow that. I'd love to hear your thoughts about those tracks. I mean, I have a personal Facebook page. Yeah, go be my friend. I, you won't see much. I don't, I got a cute little personal life, but other than that, yeah. So yeah,
Good.
just follow my stuff.
All right. I'll go ahead and I'll get all that from you again after the show's over and make sure it's in the show notes. But all
Sweet.
right. Adam Blaylock, host of Heart Songs and all this other stuff on the website, which is awesome. Adam, thanks for coming on today and sharing a lot of stuff with everybody, man.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Folks, that's been another awesome episode of the Podcaster Nation. This is the place that is about podcasters. It's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. And we just interviewed yet another really awesome podcaster, even if he doesn't think he is. We all know the truth at this point. So, folks, tune into this. Check out Adam Blaylock. Check out Heart Songs. Remember always that you have value. Remember that you're not the sum total of your downloads and your social media numbers. You're awesome. You've got a message and you matter and you count. This is the place where the rising tide raises all ships, everybody. So keep sailing.